All right, so if I need lighting. So if you guys, if I say, tell me something about Emily Dickinson, go. Okay, so tell me about something about Emily Dickinson, go.
When she died, her family found around 1,800 poems.
There were 1,800 poems when after she died, right? Okay, so I've put you on the spot right there, right? So tell me something about Emily Dickinson, go. What does she do? What's she famous for? Writing poems, right. Tell me something about Emily Dickinson, go. Okay, she wrote 1,800 poems, and stuff. All right, tell me something. Is that what you said? Yeah. Okay, tell me something about Emily Dickinson. Go. She was very secretive, kept her poems hidden away, kept herself hidden away. She was reclusive. All right, look, I've got to touch everybody in here. Tell me something about Emily Dickinson. Go. Perfect. Right? No, that's perfect. So here, this is what I got. Tell me something about Emily Dickinson. Go. Okay. She's a dead poet. She is a dead poet. She's also one of our most famous poets. So tell me something about Emily Dickinson. Go. Her name is Emily Dickinson. Okay. So so that was the easy one. All right. So look, we know a lot about Emily Dickinson, but we also don't know a lot about Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson was the type of poet, actually, she's the type of person, she was reclusive. Her family knew her. So anything that we probably have information on, we get it through her poems, we get it through her family, because you said that earlier. So Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson are probably two of our most famous poets. Emily Dickinson was very meticulous when she wrote. So when she did write her poems, she wrote for a purpose. Here's something else I bet you didn't know. She never titled her poems. Never titled her poems. So all her poems, all 1,800 of them, all right, so have no title. So what they do is use the first line of each poem for the title of that poem. So I just thought that was interesting. Most of the time she writes in these 4-line quatrains. It looks like stanzas, 4-line stanzas. And I call them quatrains. They're not quite quatrains, but you probably heard that before, and it sounds very English of me to say that. So I just wanted to go ahead and say that. But it looks like stanzas, and she gets that influence from probably some hymns back in the Christian songbook, and because her family was predominantly, seriously Christian, and I wouldn't say she turned, but she kind of stepped back, and there's information on that, but it's kind of speculative, so I don't want to say too much on it. We're going to look at a poem called "Because I Could Not Stop for Death," and you'll see the quatrains. You'll see that she does rhyme, but sometimes the rhymes are not precise. They are slant rhymes, and she does it on purpose. The reason that she probably does the 4 stanzas or the 4 lines in the stanza is because that's what people were accustomed to, even though it's a little bit different from what was coming out of Northern Europe or Europe. And even the American poets at the time, she was just, her influences were that style. So, and she didn't do it all the time, but she also used our regular figures of speech, rhyme, metaphors, similes, imagery, tons and tons of imagery. So, but you'll see, and she's fairly easy to read. All right, so do I have everybody? I hope I do. I have people waiting. I didn't even hear. Oh, because I cut the thing off. I'm sorry. So here we go. All right. So we had all that about Emily Dickinson, and I do want to say that you can reflect back on this. This is actually going to be a YouTube video, and so if you're watching it on YouTube, hey, how you doing? Sign up for my channel, subscribe to my channel. I'm just kidding. I don't even know if you're able to subscribe to this channel. It's a private channel. Anyway, I'm just going to put the link on, not the link, I'll put the actual video from YouTube on the thing later on. So, say that again? Oh, I see it. Thanks for letting me know. I didn't have the volume up, so, all right. Okay, so you should see on your screens the poem, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. I think that's one of the assignments that you have. And then we'll go through some of the other stuff. I do want to read it to you because it does need to, I am admitting you, Robert, you're not moving anywhere. So, all right, so since you're in the room, I can still keep going. All right, because I could not stop for death. I really should take a morbid tone with that, shouldn't I? I mean, I shouldn't sound excited about the death thing. I should have this, because I should not stop for death. All right, I'm not going to do that. All right. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. We passed a school where children strove at recess, in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. For only gossamer, or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill. For only gossamer, my gown, my tippet, only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Okay, so I have no clue what you feel about this, other than somebody is going, Coach, I don't get it. All right, and actually that person sat in one of my other classes, and yeah, I get that too. So what's the major theme? If I just said one of those English questions, define the theme of this poem, what's the theme? Come on, she tells us the theme right at the very beginning. Death, right. So death is the theme. And it is the theme, but there's also another part of that theme that we're going to have to understand too. And it goes all the way back to the bottom, So I started at the top. I said, what's the theme? Hey, we got death here. So, but what does she do all the way through this? She goes back through her life. We drove slowly, and then we passed school. We passed the children, we passed the gazing grain, and we passed the setting sun, or rather he passed us. And she gets to the end, and she says, I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Where's she going? Eternity. Where did she start? Before she died. I was too busy. I was too busy to stop for death. He kindly stopped for me. So she's living. She's going towards eternity. Major theme, part of that theme now has become life is a journey toward what? Death. All right? So see how I put that together? It took a long time for me as well, but that's kind of how it goes. If you look at the poem here, because I could not stop for death, just to kind of point out some things, notice the capital D in death, the capital C in carriage. Isn't that kind of weird? Capital I in immortality, and capital O for ourselves. This makes a little sense, but when we write sentences, we don't put these in capital letters, do we? What's normally reserved for capital letters? Names, proper nouns. She was given a name for death, not the Grim Reaper, but death. She personified him. Oh, wait a minute, that's a literary term. That's an element, literary element, personification. Okay, so she's personified death, and even before she wrote the word he. So even before she wrote the word he, she personified death. The carriage is also personified here. The carriage is part of this thing. It's a little bit personified just because she gives it that proper name. But a lot of people can argue, and rightly so, that carriage is not personification per se. I mean, we don't see it doing anything, do we? But yes, we do. held. The carriage held, all right, in our hands. Held. So there is some personification there. Ourselves, again, is a proper name. So she's saying that everyone. She's given us that name. She's bringing us in. And immortality is capitalized. So, and I don't know if that's capitalized because of the importance of immortality. I don't think it's necessarily the personification of just because I'm giving this that capital letter. Okay. We slowly drove. He knew no haste. I do want to say, is death frightening to her? Is she scared of death? No. Why? Why do we know that she's not scared of death?
Says he kindly stopped her.
Key word. What's the key word?
Kindly.
Kindly. Key word is kindly. Death is never kind, right? Sure it is. In this instance. So others might define it as kind or not kind. Yeah, unkind. So is she prepared for death?
Seems like it, yeah.
Okay, she's not afraid of it.
No.
She's not scared of it, but is she prepared? So there's evidence to say that she's not prepared. So now, I mean, I get what you're saying, but because I could not stop for death, think about that. I'm too busy. Think about it this way. If I go to the hospital right now and I got all these projects going on, what do you think I'm going to worry about when I'm sitting in the hospital? My projects, right? I can't stop for death. A guy that's trying to propose a contract to a potential client, and maybe trying to win that client, what's he going to do in the hospital? He's going to worry about, hey, I'm not able to meet with the client. I can't meet his needs. I can't do this. I can't do that. He's worried about that. She is not worried about this. And there's evidence down further, too, in that second stanza, where she says, my labor and my leisure, too, for his civility. She puts it away. And I had put away my labor and my leisure, too. When you're sick in the hospital, you don't do that. So this is a nice little ride for her. Real quick, too, on the third stanza, we passed a school where children strove. We passed the fields of gazing grain. What's gazing grain, by the way? Just think wheat. So, all right, thank you. If you plow a field and you plant seeds, seeds got to grow, right? So they'll grow. Wheat will grow up to a certain height and just kind of blow in the wind and stuff like that, right? Gazing grain, sun beating down on them. When does the wheat die? Eventually it dies. Everything dies, right? But this time it's prime. It's in the prime of life. So it might represent something a little bit more. All right, so now we're seeing something here. This stanza becomes metaphorical. It's a comparison between, well, it's a comparison of life. Children, school, young age, gazing grain, middle age. How about setting sun? What does that mean? Okay, old age. I'm about 4 o'clock daylight savings time, if you want to metaphorically. All right, you guys, probably about 11. You're about 11 o'clock, right? Maybe 9 or 10. Not in age, but as far as time. If I was to do metaphorically what I'm talking about here, all right, so you're not necessarily children anymore, but you're around, I'll say 10 o'clock. That's fair, right? If I metaphorically speaking. We passed a school where children strove is a time stamp for her in this thing. And it's a metaphor for young life. The gazing grain is a metaphor for midlife. The setting sun is a metaphor for elder life. I'm going to say elder. You said old. Thanks very much. I'm not old. So, but it's an elder life. So, or rather, he passed us because she doesn't think she was at her old age yet or elder life. She thinks she was kind of in the fields of gazing grain. And that's why he passed us. That sun passed her. Makes sense, right? So the dews grew quivering and chilled. This only has to do with how cold she is on this ride. She's chilly. Her gossamer is a real thin material. Of course, you know what a gown is. The tippet, her tippet, her hat or bonnet type of thing, or whatever, shawl, is only tulle, which is a, how do you define it? It's like a mesh. It's a wide mesh. That's how to define it. I can't think what it's called, but you can see through it. You can see all the holes in it. It's not a full piece of cloth. What? A netting. Yeah, thank you very much. I could not think of netting. See, and you think I don't pull students into the conversation. All right, so we paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground, and ground is repeated twice. How important is ground if it's repeated in this poem? Pretty important, right? What is the ground? What is this swelling of the ground? What is this roof that's scarcely visible? We all see it. Maybe we're not there yet, but you're going to get there. Cemetery. It's her grave. So the cornice that's in the ground, scarcely visible. So maybe that it's a place that's a grave that's going to be rarely visited. It's not, but it's going to be hers. But since then, to centuries, and yet feels shorter than a day. I first surmised the horses' heads, the horses who pull in the carriage, were toward eternity. So she has this eternal life, if you will. And I think that she says this, a lot of it's based on the religion that she grew up in. She knows about eternal life. She knows what the Christian belief is for eternal life. She knows that death is eternity. So whether you are a believer or a non-believer, we're all going to die. True fact, there is no one that you will ever meet physically that will live forever, physically, that will live here. So Christians believe a eternal life. Now this eternity is either, I don't know, good and evil, there's heaven, hell type of thing. So hell is not death. Hell is still eternity. And heaven is eternity too. So there's two ways to look at it. One is just going to be a little bit rougher. Actually a lot rougher. The other one is not so bad. Actually it's going to be more than I can describe. So I can't do it. She is like, hey, we're bound towards eternity. So that's the quick kind of lesson with what we're looking at. The big things I really want you to notice was the metaphor about the passage of time. All right, so the school, the children, the gazing grain, and the setting sun. And I think that was very important. All right, so you're going to look at some other poems as well. And I think I'm going to do that tomorrow because I really want to give you time to work on some things. And that's not what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, since I'm having computer problems and seeing how it's not coming up very quickly. Success is counted sweetest. There's 5 poems. If you get to that, that's fine. I'll read those tomorrow. So please catch up on things that you're behind on. Remember what I said. If I don't have it, I can only grade it with a 0. But if I have something, you get a good grade. So, or you get a grade on it and you get a reply from me. So make sure that you're turning in work. And I know that it could be frustrating if you have a lot of work to catch up on. Don't look at the whole picture. Just look at the single pictures one at a time. If you have trouble, contact me, let me know, talk to me, something to let me know what's going on, and I'll be able to help you as much as I can. I've cut back on a few things, a few assignments, and so just make sure that you're keeping up. And that's it. We'll get back here tomorrow on Emily Dickinson. Oh no, I hit the wrong button. I think I just left the meeting. I don't know. We'll find out in a minute.